Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. This is my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Hello. I'm doing just fine. And Jenny, who you've heard on this show before, has a new hip and is recovering very nicely.
Wow,
Very
very
well.
good, very good. Yeah, technology, medical technology is really moving. That's nowhere near as crazy a procedure as it used to be.
Oh, it was so routine? No,
Hmm.
it's major surgery. She was in a lot of pain for 2 days. She's still stiff and walking with a cane 5 days after.
Hmm.
But all of that is great considering it's only 5 days after and she's walking better than she walked before.
Wow, wow, that's amazing.
And
Amazing.
well, you do the CRISPR story that you've got queued up, and I'll talk about the experience in Mount Sinai Hospital for Jenny and what that says for everybody else's needs.
Yeah, we're talking about medical breakthroughs here, and this is something that we talked about a little bit over the last two shows, and that is treatment for sickle cell anemia, big breakthrough using the gene editing technology called CRISPR. Well, the Food and Drug Administration just this week, or at the end of last week, just approved a new therapy called Casgevy, which treats sickle cell anemia using the CRISPR gene editing technology. The treatment aims to eliminate the debilitating pain that is the hallmark of sickle cell. We talked last week, quoted from one or two patients that just talked about how the pain was just intolerable, and this treatment apparently is a big breakthrough. It's now approved by the FDA, and there is also a second. Well, let me just say on this one, on this Cascavy, it's the name of the technology using CRISPR technology. They did a trial, Dave, and in this trial there were 45 patients that used this Cascavy technique, and 31 patients were followed up 2 years later. Out of those 31 patients, 29 have been free of pain for at least a year after receiving a single dose of their own edited cells. That's a pretty amazing percentage.
An
Granted, it's a small
amazing
sample.
percentage, amazingly result. It will be true. I'm confident, and I'm not a scientist, but I've looked at this enough to have confidence. It will work for most people who are eligible for it, but it's got some gotchas. The
Yeah,
treatment
like
itself will kill
starting
you.
with the cost, right?
The cost is probably going to be over $1 million.
For
I
a
don't know how
single
they're going
patient. Hmm.
who's going to be able to get it. You probably will have to spend 2 months in the hospital because your whole immune system has to be knocked out, which is one of the reasons it's so expensive.
Hmm.
It is dangerous as heck. This is the kind of thing they do for leukemia patients as a last gasp hope. And in leukemia, it's actually saving a lot of lives, including a good friend of mine.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but knocking out the whole immune system to do something like this is a very intense process that you should only do in a life or death situation.
Yeah.
From what I understand of sickle cell, the pain is so serious, the destruction of life is so serious that it may be appropriate. Now,
Yeah.
let me talk about, if this is interesting to you, what you should do,
Okay,
or
let
if
me
it's
just
something
mention
that you
there's
don't.
a second treatment that was approved also this week by the FDA. A second type of gene treatment for sickle cell is called Lyfgenia, and it doesn't use CRISPR, but instead uses therapeutic genes to for gene cells to produce healthy hemoglobin. It's been in a 2-year trial, and 28 out of 32 patients in this trial have been successful over the last 18 months. So
Yeah.
again, there's a warning about safety with this treatment as well. So neither one of these treatments are foolproof. And as you mentioned, that there is some considerable danger, but considerable relief if it works. So sorry to cut you off, Dave. What were you
No,
going to
no,
say?
no, no, no. This is all to the point. There's going to be a lot more coming because the science here is now quite well understood. And there are dozens of research teams around the world looking for better ways to do it.
Hmm.
If I had to make a choice and I was in pain, but not catastrophic pain, if OxyContin was able to solve it when I hit a crisis, I would probably wait 2 or 5 years to see what comes out. Uh, but I'm not a scientist on this.
Hmm.
But if you're interested, the key thing is get yourself to a good physician who is clued in and able to help you
Yeah.
because this is the state of the art stuff. Most physicians do not understand what to do with it. You probably want to go on this, not merely a good physician, but a good physician at a hospital that's doing it regularly and has a lot of experience.
Hmm.
And let me tell you why I say that, which we've said here before. 5 days ago, Jenny got a new hip. She's been in pain for over a year. It was the right thing for her to do. And she's doing really well. 5 days later, she's mostly off the pain meds, can walk around with a cane, is confident of being able to walk when we go downtown that we made an appointment for Thursday evening. So that is the experience. And she was amazed by the quality of her treatment
Hmm.
in many ways. The one she really spoke about because it shocked her. She was at Mount Sinai Hospital, the main Mount Sinai, uh, and it was the nurses who were always helpful, always kind, even though they were very busy.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons they were very busy is they do a huge volume of surgeries like this, and they really had it down to a system. Ahead of time, beside giving her 2 orientation treatments so she knew what was going to be going on and what to expect, they did things like got her a really cute plastic tube, not cute, effective plastic tube that lets her put on her socks, heavy duty compression socks, even though she can't bend over because of her hip.
Hmm. Nice. Hmm.
They, they got her walkers, canes, all kind, and step by step, all thought through, all taken care of. Social workers, insurance in place to get her the equipment she needs, and so on.
Hmm.
That is exactly what you want to see happen if you need medical treatment. And Mount Sinai Hospital, which is known as one of the best in the world, delivered it. It was wonderful to see how well Jenny is doing. She was in a lot of pain for 2 days,
Hmm.
but now she's mostly off the pain meds 5 days.
That's excellent news, Dave. I'm very happy for that, for her and for you.
But if
Um,
you're looking at something like going into the CRISPR field, that's not being done 30 times a week at a big hospital.
yeah.
It's state of the art, it's new, it's much more intense, it's much more dangerous. You absolutely want to make sure on that you have a good doctor and a good hospital.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, Dave, whether or not the insurance companies are gonna be able to even participate in that with that big price tag. I mean, do you think they're just gonna initially just give it to private folks who can write that check, or is there any indication from your experience whether or not the insurance companies are gonna start to chip in on that $1 million price tag?
It's a big fight, and Medicaid is going to be in the middle of it, and it's going to be different state by state.
Hmm.
There are treatments for things, cures for hepatitis, and probably for hemophilia. that also cost like $1 million. And every one of them has been a fight to get it available to patients
Yeah.
and to get it paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And of course, let me and aside, most of our listening audience probably knows this. The bulk of sickle cell patients are African American, and traditionally, we African Americans are on the lower end of the economic scale, and $1 million for a medical procedure is really not at all realistic for most African Americans. So
or anybody
something has to
else.
be done, or anybody else for that matter. $1 million? You kidding me? Yeah.
Yeah. I had a, what is the American system? I had a friend, she was a doctor, but she had chosen to spend the last 20 years, and she had things like Harvard and Yale degrees, working in clinics, not making very much money,
Hmm.
and having limited health insurance. A few years ago, she got breast cancer. She had health insurance, but it was one of the less expensive health insurances that the clinic had bought. And she was referred to MD Anderson Hospital, one of the great cancer centers down in Houston. And when she went there, they said, well, because of your insurance, you're going to have to start by putting down $15,000.
Whoa.
She didn't have.
Wow.
And I know that because she was looking to friends for help.
Hmm.
That is America today.
Yeah.
She happened to be a white woman
Hmm.
with fancy degrees, including
Yeah.
a medical and a law degree.
Hmm.
But she made choices in her life that didn't make money,
Yeah.
for which you can respect her. That is a system. And there's something on the order of 2 million people whose Medicaid is being cut off by Congress after the COVID funding runs out.
Mm. Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
And no other country, no other wealthy country has this problem, whether it be France or
Mm.
Canada or Japan or Korea, you're covered for
Yeah.
just about everything.
Yeah.
The United States is the only one that kills people because they don't have enough money to pay for medical treatment.
Yeah. Well, the money drives the system. It's totally capitalistic. There's money first and
Money
healthcare
drives the
second.
German system and the British system too. But they found a way to solve this problem.
Yeah.
It is criminal that the United States still has this issue.
Hmm. Well,
Heck, I,
one piece of information I want to throw out there, Dave, is not life and death, but it's an interesting use of technology in healthcare that I just wanted to bring to our audience, and that is something developed by a company called Cellro Systems, and they've developed a digital pill that you swallow, and it measures heart rate, breathing rate, core temperature from inside the body, and from inside the stomach, and relays that information digitally to what the receivers that the physicians have set up to receive and analyze and track uh, patient vital statistics. It's initially been used for sleep apnea, folks who have the problem of falling asleep or not being able to sleep, both falling asleep and not getting a good night's sleep. And the pill was able to monitor all kinds of activity inside the body and get information that otherwise would have to be acquired with surgery. In a couple of days, the pill is passed out in the toilet, so it doesn't stay in your body. But apparently, being able to transmit and record these vital statistics from inside the body has been really helpful in the treating of sleep apnea. They're also using it for folks who are potential drug overdoses. You're talking about some of the, I guess, really intense painkiller drugs that folks take. This particular, the digital pill is able to monitor the body for folks who may be taking pills that could potentially result in I guess your heart stopping or other kind. I'm talking about like fentanyl and other drugs like that. this pill can monitor your body and send out alerts to medical staff if there's an emergency, if you pass out, if there's a potentially fatal overdose of any of these drugs. Of course, you gotta know that you're that you're on the drug and that you're at risk in order to use this pill. But that's one of the potential applications that folks are looking at. So I just thought that was interesting, Dave. A pill inside the body, sending out signals electronically to medical devices, monitoring your vital signs.
I don't know about this one, but there's one that's been around for 2 or 3 years, at least in research, that has a miniature camera,
Hmm.
and you take the pill. It's
Mm-hmm.
not huge, and as it goes through your stomach, it can send, probably using Wi-Fi,
Mm-hmm.
out to the doctor pictures as it goes through your stomach to see, for example, whether you have a stomach ulcer.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of these functions now built into watches. There are on the market fairly reliable watches that can check not just your heart rate and your pulse,
Mm-hmm.
but your blood pressure and your blood sugar without needing to go through your skin from outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to do it. They're not 100% effective. It's now also almost automatic with, in at least one cardiologist I know, all her patients gets a very small monitor, size of a quarter, implanted in their chest that sends a signal out if their heart rate becomes
Mm-hmm.
irregular.
Mm.
So there's what. But you mentioned fentanyl. As I was saying, a good hospital can really do things right, and that's what Mount Sinai did for Jenny. She got the new hip Friday. As the anesthesia wore off, she was in terrible pain.
Mm-hmm.
They were giving her the narcotic, and the doctors, when she saw her pain was really bad, gave her fentanyl for a few
Mm-hmm.
hours. Suddenly she could sleep, and did it briefly, but without a quit. Fentanyl is a very dangerous drug. We
Yeah.
know how many people were being killed by it, but there's a place for it, and they were set up to give it to her when she needed it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you want to make sure you get good doctors and good
Right.
hospitals and do wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
Next story.
Well, I know we're going to talk more about AI after the break, but somewhat a little bit related. Scientists have recently built a functional computer that uses human brain tissue as one of the elements in its operating system. Pretty amazing. It's something called BrainAware, is what they call it, led by an engineer by the name of Fang Guo at the Indiana University in Bloomington. And so far, it has completed tasks like speech recognition and nonlinear equation prediction. Apparently, uh,
I got the specifics on it.
okay. Well,
I went
tell us
into
why.
a little more.
I know they grow the brain tissue in a lab using stem cells, and then they connect the brain tissue to more traditional computer type structures and electrodes and stuff. But you give us some of the background that you know about this stuff, Dave.
Okay. As we know, going back to the day of HeLa cells, you can grow human cells in the lab. And you can tell
Hmm.
the HeLa cell story, which we had on the air a while back again, if you
Yeah.
were to bring that into this show. So it's quite possible, in fact, it's standard, constant practice in research to grow human and animal cells in the lab. What this one is built is they're growing human neural cells. Like in your brain, you've got 1 trillion little neurons in your brain. And as they grow, they connect as they do in the brain. So, what they're able to do is neural cells work on electric pulses. So, on one end of the system, of many cells grown on a chip, they send in an electric pulse. The cells there, just like the cells in your brain, react to it. and adjust how they're connected, which is what the weights in a computer neural network is, and comes out the other end with an interpretation of the data that came in. If the data that controls the electrodes going in is based on human speech, what comes out when thrown through an artificial intelligence system can do a really lousy job of interpreting speech, but a lousy job of human cells on a chip interpreting speech is like a dog that learned how to play chess but loses half his games.
Yeah,
Pretty
pretty
impressive.
amazing stuff. Pretty amazing
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I just
And
want to throw out some numbers, Dave, by comparison. The same story talked about just how amazingly complicated and complex the human brain is. I guess we kind of all know that. Just we all have one. But some of the statistics of the brain, 86 billion neurons on average, and up to a quadrillion synapses. Each neuron that is,
what are the connections from neuron to neuron? Each neuron has many of them.
yeah, each neuron has like, each neuron is connected up to 10,000 other neurons. So, just look at the story. It says that the computer folks have a long way to go. AI has a long way to go before it has this level of complexity and depth to it. But nevertheless, what they got going with this brain tissue and this brain aware, it's a start.
And it may turn out, I mean, I'm spending all my time in AI now, so I'm seeing all this. We are far, far from the number of connections of human or even mouse brains.
Hmm.
When you think of 86 billion in the course of your head,
But
but they have come up with a whole lot of tricks to make only, oh, I don't know, 70 billion work parameters work as well as a trillion for many things. It's going to get surprisingly close, which is why it is so serious. What can happen could be wonderful, will be wonderful. The wonderful things that are already starting to happen could be dangerous as heck. But
mhm.
we can come back to that because the Europeans have just passed major legislation on the subject, and there's a lot to say after the break. Do we have any
Yes.
time before the break?
Yeah, it's about time to go. And in addition to that, one of the other really interesting topics that we're going to kick around is digital equity for incarcerated people. Really important subject about just how inaccessible and incredibly expensive it is for folks that are locked up to communicate with families and loved ones and lawyers and others. But we'll get to that in a moment. This is Community Technology on WACR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break.
In this life, We're coming in, coming in, coming in, coming in. Coming in from the cold. It's you, I'm talking. Well, yes, you, still upon you I'm talking to now. Girl, why do you look so sad and forsaken? Don't you know when one door is closed, many more is open. Well, would you let the system get on top of your head again? No, that no. Would you let the system make you kill your brother, man? No, dread, no. Well, would you make the system get on top of your head again? No. Well, the biggest thing you ever did see was I once a baby in this life, in this oh sweet life. Coming in from the cold. Coming in. Whoa, yeah. Coming in from the cold. We're coming in. Yeah. Coming in from the cold.
Okay, we're back. Community Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Dave, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that maybe many of our listeners know about, and I suspect many do not. And that is the incredible state or lack of digital equity for folks that are locked up, that are incarcerated. Most folks pay about $30 a month for unlimited data on their internet connection or the phone connection. Well, one 30-minute phone call, a video phone call, can cost that if you're locked up. Even on the outdated pay phones in prisons, it's $3 for every 15 minutes on average. Extortionist rates. And, I remember looking at this, a decade or so ago, maybe even 20 years ago, before the big revolution in telecom. And at the time, the providers talked about how expensive it was to provide the service. But now today, with the internet and the networks being as advanced as they are, there's no legitimate technological reason. There's no real cost that's involved by the carriers that justify these exorbitant rates. Apparently, the whole prison communications industry is dominated by two companies, Dave, just two companies. A company called
And they're
Security.
both crooks, and I'm using
Oh,
that
they
word
gotta be crooks. They
only
gotta be
as a
crooks.
rival,
Let me just put their
may.
names out there so folks know them. Securus, Securus, and Viapath, Viapath. Securus and Viapath. Two companies that dominate the entire prison communications industry throughout the country. And it's really just it's a crime what they are doing inside the prison. Today, there are approximately 1.8 million people that are currently incarcerated in the U.S.
What
And
color are those people, Stu?
predominantly black and brown. You better believe that. Those are the ones that get arrested, black and brown folks.
Uh,
Another
yeah.
stat, almost 1 in 2 Americans have an immediate family member who's incarcerated.
Or was incarcerated in
Yeah,
the past.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, that's a
That's
huge
nearly
number.
2 million people in cages in the United States. China, with 4 times our population, has fewer people in jail.
Mm.
And we know that China is an authoritarian state.
Hmm.
And there's the what brought it up is an essay that I passed on to Stu, sent out from Washington, about why this should be changed and how maybe all these $42 billion they're putting into getting everybody connected to the internet, some of that can be used to help prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take a minute talking about?
Yeah, please do. And let me just mention, I think this is mostly regulated on the state level. It's the states that need to do something about this. I don't know that the feds can really impact that, except that they have the money. But go ahead, Dave. What's your opinion?
The feds can affect interstate calls, but
Mm-hmm.
most people's families are not in another state. Jessica Rosenworcel, who's now the FCC chair and has been on the FCC for many years, has been fighting this for many years and only gotten small concessions. The companies make a fortune and they kick back a fair amount of that money to the prisons who don't want to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm reading a superb book on artificial intelligence. And it went into how do neural networks promote equity and fairness. And it looked at this one, or it picked up the work of an extraordinary reporter who promised to come on our show, and we never got that together, Julia Angwin, who almost won a Pulitzer Prize for this when she was at the Wall Street Journal. What she did, at this point, they are using artificial intelligence to figure out whether you stay in jail or get released before trial and when you come up for parole. Looked at the data on that. Now, of course, that means we got a very severe consequence of biased artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Was it biased? Well, we know, we've talked on the show many times about how the dark-skinned people don't show up the same way in face recognition. One of the reasons the Europeans have basically outlawing face recognition other than for law enforcement, something that we should probably do here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they were looking at this question on parole. And the organization, the leading artificial intelligence company, said, our software is excellent. And it's not biased because it's 71% accurate on whether people get paroled, go back to jail within 3 years, both for whites and for blacks. Equal. Obviously not biased, they said. Well, Julia Angwin went back, confirmed that 71% number. But here was the question, the other 29%, where the software got it wrong. On white people, it generally underestimated their risk of going back to jail.
Mm-hmm.
On blacks, African Americans, it overestimated the risk.
Not surprising.
Well, that's a clear example of bias that the system was swearing there was no bias.
Yeah.
And until Julia put together a team, she was at ProPublica by then, who spent a year building up the data, going through 10,000 cases to find out what actually happened, that she proved there's this kind of bias. And that kind of bias is very common in neural networks and artificial intelligence, which is worth a whole nother show.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I asked for a moment here is, who are the people who are in jail? Well, drugs are expensive. Black people don't have that much money. Every study, including one that was used in this book about neural networks, where I found it, says that whites and blacks are about as likely to be using drugs. And blacks are 4 times as likely to go to jail for it.
4 times as likely.
4 times as
with
likely.
with the same rate of usage.
Same rate of usage.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I remember that I know at Columbia University exactly which fraternity house could get you any drug you wanted
Hmm.
back when I was a student.
And
Happened to
that'll be a white fraternity house.
It happened
The
to be
black
the
fraternities
fraternity
didn't have
house where
houses.
Frank
There are a
Coleman,
couple of black fraternities that started when I was there, Dave, around the time of you, but we did not have houses at the time. So yeah.
not the least bit surprised.
Hmm.
There's less discrimination in some ways in the United States, but more in others.
Yeah, I mean it's so implicit. I mean it's built in. It's almost invisible until somebody like that reporter that you just mentioned does a study. You don't even see it. You have these software systems and algorithms that have all this technology and all this so-called science and all these PhDs behind it that swear and make claims about because it is so scientific and computer generated. It's neutral when in fact it's not neutral. The algorithms and even the learning that all these AI systems are working on, all of the models are for the most part generated by white folks, white men at that. So that white male bias is built in through and through all of the AIs. I don't know how it cannot be the case, Dave. The bias is inherent in the algorithms. They are put together for the most part by white males, and that somehow their inherent biases would not be built in is just it doesn't make sense. It's ludicrous. It's taken the hard work and the investigative reporting of many well-meaning people to really bring that forward.
Let me come back to that in the
Oh,
next show because I've got a lot of
okay.
details that even surprised me. We know there's lots of bias in it, but how deep it goes uh, and how it's being fought is worth the show. How
Okay.
much do we have time to get to the other story?
Yeah, well, so we'll talk in more detail about the AI bias on another show. But in the meantime, we got about 10 minutes left, Dave, to talk about what's going on with AI internationally. I know that you mentioned earlier that the European Union has come out with some regulation about AI. What happened over there?
Really major. They've been talking about it for 2 years. It won't go into effect for another 2 years, but they have a comprehensive, important, but seriously limited set of regulations about how you use artificial intelligence that is going to apply in the European Union in 2025 or so.
Mhm.
What did you see that impressed you about this?
I really haven't studied this. So I don't really know. I can't comment on that. What did you see? Tell me about it.
Okay,
I haven't
let
had a
me.
chance to study it.
Well, I came in on my mobile phone, so I'm not. My computer has lost all the notes I had, uh, and but I remember enough of it to talk. First of all,
Okay.
this is serious, real legislation. It is Google or Facebook face fines in the billions.
Okay.
They violate the regulations, up to 7% of their annual gross. Stu and I have come out
That's significant. That's significant. I mean that's a number that would get their attention.
that number will get their attention.
But now what is it that the regulation is monitoring or putting a check on?
A lot of things that it should be. It's serious consumer oriented legislation. Blocks facial recognition, except when used by the police or
Hmm.
security forces. Prevents Palantir or Elon Musk other company. Is Elon Musk confessing? No. His friend Peter Thiel's company that scraped the web to get almost every face that's ever been on the web, billions of people
Mm.
ready to go for face recognition that's being used by police forces across the United States, even if it would be illegal for them to do it themselves.
Hmm.
The Europeans are limiting that.
Wow, nice.
They looked at the really big problem, which is, will the artificial intelligence get so capable that we can't control it and terrible things would happen? They did not prohibit big artificial intelligence programs, but they required a set of rules that they explain what they're doing, including to government, have transparencies, have external reviews of what's going on. It's not everything that you need to protect against what's going on. It's small steps, but small steps are more than the United States has done.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons the United States hasn't done anything is because companies like Google and Facebook and Microsoft are spending literally hundreds of millions lobbying Washington to prevent real privacy legislation, important AI legislation going through Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And they found lots of arguments, one of which just came from New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who's got it all wrong. Schumer said we have to be really careful because if we have regulations, maybe that will prevent innovation and getting the great things that'll happen.
Yeah, right.
Nonsense. When we're talking about building large language models, we're talking about investing hundreds of millions of dollars and more. Microsoft has put $11 billion into OpenAI, $2 billion into Anthropic. Google's put $2 billion into Anthropic. That's the kind of money that they're spending. So a few regulations and having to have an external review board and do some paperwork is not going to slow down.
No impact. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that the really important thing was protected, which is open source software, crucial in AI. And the original legislation would have required open source makers, the sometimes thousands of individuals who contribute to an open source project around the world, to also follow these rules. And they don't have $11 billion worth of Microsoft money to pay for it. They don't have any way to coordinate it. It would probably have destroyed open source. And Clem of Hugging Face and Jan LeCun at NYU and Meta have been really strong about how open source needs to be protected. And that did make it into the rules. Mm-hmm. There's another huge loophole that means that the European regulations are not going to solve many important things. Why? Because a quarter of the internet and probably as much of AI is coming from China.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between America and China in AI is very slight. Throw that in another show, which means that you cannot make effective rules about AI, which transcends borders. And I can log on, as I have, to Huawei's large language model, because they released their operating system as open source. I got the whole software for Huawei's operating system downloaded. Unless you find a way to work with the United States and Europe and China. Sunak, the British Prime Minister, ran a big conference on AI dangers a month ago. He made a point of inviting China, saying, whatever we're talking about, it's not going to work if the whole world doesn't agree.
Right.
The United States fought against that decision, blocking China, blocking anything that happens at the UN or any organization that's truly international. And as a result, much of the rules, even if we pass those rules in the United States, are going to be meaningless. And I sat there listening to top people from Google and Meta, and I forget whether it was OpenAI or Microsoft, at a seminar from the All Tech is Human people about 3 months ago.
Mhm.
And it was nonsense. They talked about how everybody was working together and they meant each other. That yes, Google and OpenAI are exchanging research on how to prevent the harms of AI. They refuse to take any questions, like for me. Well, we all know that it's
Mhm.
not going to work if China isn't included. So, how are you planning to include China?
They're
No
not.
questions were
Yeah,
allowed.
they're not.
Okay. So, all the serious stuff about protecting of the dangers of AI, as opposed to some real consumer stuff like lousy facial recognition and making social scores of people based on their Facebook postings and throwing them into a neural network and deciding whether or not they get into college or get out of jail,
Mhm.
for that matter. Yes, some of those things that are purely domestic, the Europeans are doing something about. The Americans are not. The White House made the decision because they wanted to show progress to let the companies make the rules that they have to observe.
Wow.
Now, the people in charge of OpenAI and probably at Google and Microsoft are basically decent people who want to do right. They're trying to find ways, and they are working together to avoid some of the harms. There's loads of research, for example, on overcoming bias. Hasn't completely solved it, can't completely solve it, but they're working on things like that because they mean well. But if they decide to go ahead and just do what they and be competitive and get their product out the door before it's ready, as they have been, there's no law that
Yeah.
stops them.
Yeah.
The
And,
Europeans
and,
have now
and,
passed the law, which is an improvement. It is a law. It has
mhm.
real penalties. It will have an agency charged to enforcing it across Europe. The other thing last thing to say here is that there was ridiculous reporting. The people in Europe at the EU said, this is great. This is the first real regulation of artificial intelligence. They're lying. The Chinese did similar months ago.
Mhm.
Chinese regulations are at least as strong on things like privacy and far stronger than the Americans. They're serious about it. They have done $1 billion fines against companies like Alibaba for not going along with the Chinese government rules on things like that. And the regulations are very serious, preventing the companies in China from abusing a lot of things with AI. Of course, we all know what the Chinese government is like, and none of the regulations really affect what the government does as opposed to the companies. But it was simply a lie for the Europeans to say they were the first. The American reporters on this picked that up from the Europeans like it was the
Mhm.
first. That's American exceptionalism carried to an extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
They got the story bloody wrong on
Mhm.
something they've been working long and hard and should know the facts
Mhm.
when they said the Europeans are the first in the world.
Mhm.
It's not true,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean that the Chinese government is not. Well, authoritarian is a polite word about it.
Mhm. But still, we have such blinders on when it comes to the Chinese and what they're doing that and as you mentioned, Dave, the internet and technology is global. Everything's interconnected. So much open source on all of the AI stuff that there's no way that you can operate in a silo and say that, oh, okay, everybody over here is going to be protected when you got so much stuff going on elsewhere on the planet that is going to permeate the whole ecosphere. I mean, it's crazy that we are not looking, but I guess that's the political reality of the world we live in today, is that it's almost impossible to have really open communications with folks in
It's
China.
not almost impossible. It's a choice made by the US government under political pressure.
Okay.
The
Okay.
Chinese are putting all their stuff out in open source.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing everything to the UN, and they are 15 to 25% of the important advances in AI. They're producing more papers in artificial intelligence than the United States today. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them are really breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese are very smart, and Tsinghua University, according to my friend, the Stanford professor, is on a par with Stanford and MIT, which are the best in the West.
Okay, well,
So
we're
we
going to
are
have to
hurting
talk
ourselves.
about this further, Dave. We're about out of time. This is fascinating. I want to get back and talk more about the whole global climate around AI and what's happening. I also want to go back and follow up on the story on digital equity in prison. That's such a big story that I want to keep an eye on that and keep that in front of our listeners and viewers.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. This has been Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Tune in. Just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.